Coming up this week on the Markcast, the XFL is hiring. Like a lot. Lots of positions, multiple social media people, art directors, recruiters. As someone that has bemoaned the USFL's lack of spending for the last year, is the XFL spending too much money? I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Who's this gentleman sitting behind you?
Hello, Ms. Lady. I'm Dale. I'm Brennan's stepbrother.
Then longtime friend of the show and new follower of the Markcast on Twitter, Farhan Lalji, stops by the show, gives his thoughts on CFL Week 11, the Nathan Rourke of it all. Plus, he has lots of thoughts on the USFL and XFL as well.
My expectations weren't high, and I don't want to dismiss it, right? Like, you know me. I'm not one of these guys that just poo-poos all these leagues and say they're never going to work and we shouldn't bother and it's all trash. I'm not that guy. More football is good football, right? So even for me, like, I'll flick on the games from time to time and try to check out certain names and see what they can do. I don't overplay the number of guys that have signed. I think it's a good thing, right? That those guys are getting an opportunity to showcase their talents and sign. I don't think a lot of them are going to make their teams, and I don't think a lot of them are going to be, certainly those that do aren't necessarily going to be household names.
Then we have Nathan Rourke of the St. Louis Business Journal stopping by. Nathan has lots of thoughts, the Kaka, St. Louis, all of that, but also the XFL startup mentality, them, spending money, trying to raise more money. What is the plan here?
If you say you're a software company and you're developing some sort of software, you might go out and raise a little bit of money at the start because I need some money to get this going. But then you're going to create, your kind of minimal product that you could go to market. At that point, you're probably going to go out and raise more capital, saying, hey, here, we built it. We see opportunity here. Let's raise capital so we can grow it further. And I kind of see that's where the XFL's at.
Then I chat with Steve Gera of BreakAway Data, talking all of the innovations, new things they're working through with the XFL headed into the 2023 kickoff, scouting players, getting data, all of that stuff.
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of really good talent that doesn't make NFL rosters, like full stop. There's plenty of really good talent to have some compelling, leagues, especially with the XFL, right?
Should be a good show. Don't forget about our special BC Lions at Saskatchewan Roughriders pre-show live stream that we're doing Friday ahead of the big matchup. Hey guys, welcome to the Markcast. Reed here. Thank you all so much for stopping by today. Should be a good slate of guests here coming up. It's kind of, the dog days of summer working through. We have some announcements. We're trying to pontificate over other things, but I think I've put together collectively enough stuff this week to kind of sink our teeth into and figure out what is going on in the world of alt football. Before I forget, don't forget tonight, Andrew Murray, my ride or die with live streams. I don't think I could do a live stream without Andrew Murray at this point. Andrew Murray is joining me along with Jim Mullen and Gord Randall of Crown Gridiron Nation. Jim Mullen, Football Canada president, newly reelected Football Canada president. That's exciting. And Gord Randall, all joining me. We are going to be doing a special live stream pre-show ahead of the BC Lions at Saskatchewan Roughriders game tonight, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. If you're listening to this, Friday during the day. If you're listening to this after Friday evening, check it out anyway. We're going to be taking lots of calls, talking, CFL, USFL, and XFL. So, it's a pregame show, but I don't think it's going to be all, specifically focused on that. I think it should be a little evergreen to get you through the weekend. Big show this week. Really excited to have Farhan Lalji back on the show, with TSN, the big CFL insider. Really appreciate Farhan's time coming on. He's flying out to cover, they've got him covering like NFL training camps, CFL training camps, or CFL season, not training camps anymore, but all that kind of stuff. Really appreciate Farhan. We kind of hit the gamut. Lots of Nathan Rourke talk. That's the height of popularity right now in the CFL. I got my BC Lions cap on. Everyone wants to talk about Nathan Rourke. Lots of thoughts with Farhan about that. Also, what does Nathan do after the season? If Nathan decides to go to the NFL, what does that mean, in terms of the leverage the CFL has or its place, right? Losing players, not being able to keep them from going to the NFL. Farhan has lots of thoughts. We also talk lots of XFL talk, with the cities and the investor, them seeking investors, all that stuff. Farhan, lots of talks about that. And then also players transitioning from the USFL to the NFL. What does Farhan think about that in terms of, these developmental or feeder leagues, the alt football leagues? Where do they fit into that place with the NFL? Lots of good thoughts with Farhan. I really appreciate that. Then Nathan Rubbelke is coming on, the St. Louis Business Journal. Lots of, XFL St. Louis talk this week anyway, with Coach Beck kind of running amok in St. Louis, throwing out a pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals game the other night. I was going to make a really off-color remark on Twitter. Thankfully, a couple of people stepped me off the cliff from that one, putting my foot in my mouth. But really good to see, Coach Beck out there, kind of, working the crowds, talking, who doing all the local ESPN interviews, everything in St. Louis, trying to build that fan base. I know they're doing the same thing in Washington, D.C. We're trying to get these coaches out there, trying to kind of build the interest in the communities. We're hiring people for the communities. We're hiring social media for all that. So Nathan has lots of good talks. Plus, Nathan is, he covers not only sports and business, but tech and startups. So Nathan has a lot of thoughts about kind of where the XFL fits into, kind of that startup mentality was the word that we used a lot. We talked last week, the XFL is looking for investors. What does Nathan think about, giving up 30 to 45% of potentially of equity before the season kicks off? Really insightful stuff from Nathan. Really appreciate that. And then finally, we have Steve Gera coming on with BreakAway Data, talking with Steve about the work that they're doing with the XFL in terms of scouting, player data. Now we know that Jordan Palmer is coming in to work with the XFL quarterbacks here in the fall ahead of the season. So what does Steve think about that? Lots of good stuff with Steve as well. Really appreciate the people at BreakAway Data and the XFL for setting that up. So, it should be a really good show. 3 quality guests, long interviews, each one. So I really appreciate that. You guys all for watching. But just before we go, just some thoughts, kind of tying into the title of the episode this week. The XFL hiring. Always good to use a Step Brothers clip there. I appreciate that. I've kind of liked that lately, kind of putting the nap pop, the little pop in of the a piece of video or song, whatever. We had the Shark Tank thing last week, but the XFL is hiring a tremendous number of people right now. They have 13 current openings. A lot of those are doubled up, right? You have like 8 social media people for the one. You have 8 for the other. So, tons of job opportunities right now, tons of hiring on the XFL's front. And it's funny, I was talking with Nathan in the interview about it. I have bemoaned the USFL forever for being too frugal, not spending enough money. We have like a PR department of one. We're not dealing with the social media, kind of social media by committee, that sort of thing. And now the XFL totally off on the other like page here. It's fascinating to me to see how different these two leagues are operating. The XFL this week, if you go to xfl.com and you click on the careers page, this is all linked through the XFL. They're hiring social media managers, not only for the 8 teams locally in the cities like St. Louis, Seattle, Orlando, but then they're also hiring Arlington-based social media managers for the teams as well. So potentially, 2 different, Max pointed this out to me, listener Max, online, that potentially, 2 different, 16 different people, but 2 different per team managing the XFL social media, whether it be in Arlington, generating content like Danny Garcia said. She had mentioned in the Arlington press conference that they want to use Arlington and Choctaw Stadium as kind of the hub to generate, right, a lot of the social media content during the week as the players are going to be there before they fly out to the local markets. But then having people based in the cities, they're also hiring, we had previously reported directors of marketing for each of the teams, VP of business and event operations for each of the teams. These are real life like roles here. It feels so different than how the USFL has approached this. And not that the USFL is not a real football league, certainly, and lots of hard work and everybody there, but it just feels like the XFL, it really is like sink or swim at this point, going all in with all of this stuff. Director of Team Communications and Media Relations for each of the teams. We also reported this week that Sean Hayes joined the XFL as Director of Player Performance. He was from the WWE, helped kind of run the Performance Center there for years, kind of WWE bringing in all of the players bringing in all of the wrestlers into the Performance Center there, training them, getting them up to speed. I have a feeling Sean is going to be doing a similar approach with the XFL, right? We're bringing everyone into Arlington. We're going to have guys there that are not on teams, keeping them trained and up to shape, ready for injury to jump into the different teams. But Sean Hayes, that was a big hire. Jordan Palmer, we reported this week as well. I talked with Steve Gera about that. Joining the XFL as the Director of Quarterback Development. He's going to start working with the players as early as September, I think, depending on when XFL kind of signs and allocates a lot of those quarterbacks to the teams, but that'll be interesting to track. But it's just really interesting to me here. I mean, to me, the biggest story this week is just not only that the XFL is hiring, but just how much they're hiring. All of these different positions, really feeling like, NFL level, CFL level. When I talk with the CFL, numerous people for each team, depending on what kind of access I'm trying to get, if it's player interviews, things like that. So fascinating to see XFL spending a ton of money. Is that sustainable? Bringing in all of these people, I think, social media, we've all bemoaned online for, months, USFL's lack of that. I think the XFL, listening to the fans or just kind of reading the tea leaves about, we need to do more of this. I talked with Nathan. I think the XFL is almost overcompensating for being in the lack of markets right now, right? Basing everything in Arlington. We're sending Anthony Becht out, we're sending the coaches out to DC, doing all that stuff. So fascinating to see. That is my big takeaway commentary this week, the XFL hiring. Really appreciate you all listening. I will check back in at the end of the show for some outro notes. I have one more giveaway photo to post. Thank you guys all so much again. Be sure to check out the live stream. And thanks again. Take care. Now that we are officially Twitter followers of each other, we have Farhan Lalji back on the show. How are you doing, sir?
I am good. When I found out that you actually were a photographer for wedding videos, I thought, how could I not follow this guy? He's got so much love in his heart. And truthfully, I thought I was following you anyway because I get so much of your stuff regardless. So I didn't know that I wasn't. So I feel shame, but glad we got it rectified.
No, that's good. I appreciate it. So I'm excited. We're in the middle of the CFL season. I just bought Dorothy and I's plane tickets to Regina this week, so we will be there for the Grey Cup. So look forward to that. How we haven't talked to you since the season started. How is the CFL season going for you?
It's been going well, right? I mean, this Nathan Rourke story is kind of the story that just keeps on giving, right? And not the Canadian part. I'm so past that, but just the fact that he's just been so darn good, and this league is in need of young stars and better play at the quarterback position and all of that kind of thing, right? So it's been good. It's been a good story, and we've seen scoring up. Games have been more entertaining, and I think there's been a lot to like so far from the CFL this season.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because obviously we're newer to covering this, and we've been told CFL, and that's all. You got Matt Dunnigan throwing for 700 yards, right? All these things, and now is Nathan Rourke good, historically good? Like, where does he fit into the history of the CFL?
Well, in terms of starts, right? First 10 starts for a player, I think this is as good as any, right? And the numbers bear that out. There have been some good ones. Bo Levi Mitchell, the early stage of his career was really, really good. And Jeff Garcia. And there have been some others, and for me, like, he's legitimately young, because so often a quarterback comes into this league and we view them as young, but really they've been through the NFL training camp circuit. They bounced around, and then eventually they come here, and then it takes some time to figure out the game. And, by the time they start, they're 27, 28 years old. And from a football perspective, they're not young. Nathan is 24. He's truly young. And he had a 1-year apprenticeship a year ago after coming directly from college to the CFL. So what he's been able to do at a really young age has been incredible. And just, it's not just a physical talent, right? But it's his ability to process and the mental side of the game, which has impressed so many coaches around the league, because I've seen this before with quarterbacks that have been 1-year wonders, the Casey Printers, the John Jennings, and these guys that have kind of been the definition of flash in the pan. And when you talk to the defensive coordinators, they know it's coming, right? And they'll tell you things like, yeah, whatever. Like, wait till we get him the second time around. We hadn't seen him before, but it'll all change. The tone from coaches around the league about Nathan Rourke has been 1,000% different, right? Like, the visiting coordinators or the opposing coordinators are blown away, and they're not 100% sure how to defend him. They think they've got an idea, and then they go and they implement that game plan, and then eventually he figures it out, and they leave the game saying, wow, he's even better than I thought, and I thought he was good. So, yeah, like, this kid is historically good. And you talk about Matt's 700 yards, right? For Nathan to do that, it's going to have to be more back and forth like you saw this week against Calgary, because most of his big numbers have come in games that are one-sided. You eventually kind of call the dogs off, right? So, I'm curious to see what would happen if he's just got to trade punches right until the end and plays great start to finish.
Yeah, watching the game, because I finished my gig and then I was watching on the way home, got home, was able to watch, and I really did I was really scared of the game. BC looked so good last year starting out. I think a lot of those wins were against like Red Blacks, teams that didn't know what they were doing, and I thought, okay, here we go again. We lost to Winnipeg. Now Calgary, we're down 17, coming back. I mean, the win, to be able to come back from being down the whole game like that, especially down 17 points. It just speaks to the character of Nathan and just the tenacity of the whole team, I guess. But what did you make of just such a deficit to come back?
Yeah, it didn't necessarily shock me that he was able to get it figured out offensively. After the first touchdown that they scored to Rhymes, I tweeted that this felt a lot like the Saskatchewan game, right? Where it didn't look good for BC for a quarter and a half, and then they came back. The difference is Saskatchewan couldn't really take advantage of BC's special teams problems, and Calgary did, and therefore they were able to continue scoring. Whereas in that Saskatchewan game, BC's defense was able to take it over because the field position issue wasn't so glaring, right? Whereas Calgary made it look like Winnipeg made it look, and everything was a short field, right? I mean, you look at Calgary at halftime of that game, they had 30 points. One of the touchdowns was a pick six, but even their 23 points, they didn't have to do much, right? Because their special teams and a couple of other turnovers by Nathan gave them such good field position that it kind of inflated the Calgary point totals, right? So I was curious to see what would happen in the second half if they were able to figure out that side of it and actually able to force Calgary's offense to work, which I don't know that they ever did. But I just felt like BC's offense was going to be able to figure it out, right? And they were able to do that, and they were able to keep punching. And just the fact that they were able to do it even after the kick return touchdown late that put Calgary back up 2 scores, I think that was the most remarkable part in all of it, right? That he was able to show that he could still stay resilient. The one thing with Nathan, and I think the team feeds off it because we don't give the team enough credit, right? Because it's all the receivers, it's the defense. Yeah, the special team needs work, but the kickers are great, right? It's just the coverage teams and the blocking that's so poor. Everybody thrives off him because they believe that he's just going to keep chopping wood. And so often a whole team gets down when when the score gets like that, and you just think it's just not our day. But the Lions don't feel that way because they know Nathan Rourke doesn't feel that way, and he's able to stay in the moment. And Rick Campbell talked about his mindfulness after the game. The guy just keeps chopping wood. He just doesn't get down. He just keeps punching, and that's the remarkable part about Nathan Rourke.
When Calgary ran that kickoff back for the touchdown, I almost threw my phone through the window. Like I was so
I love your passion for the BC Lions, Reed. It's awesome. Shows the Vancouver-Seattle connection, my guy.
Well, no, because I watch so much football apathetically. Even the USFL, stars for my team, but I really, Washington football team and then the BC Lions. But I really I thought it was done after that. But like you said, they just don't give up, and they came back, and Nathan kept his head down.
Yeah, and again, for a guy that's that young to do that, right? That's the hard part, And I like every quarterback at some level kind of gets caught up in the narratives, right? Like I always laugh at athletes, and I shouldn't laugh because it works for many, but so many athletes manufacture motivation, right? Like they come up with some bullshit that they've read on Twitter or the media, and they take it and they just rally around it, right? Well, wait a minute, like you're a professional athlete, you've been doing this forever and you're getting paid lots of money to do this, but yet you need this little bit of manufactured motivation to get you going. Well, whatever fills your boots. But that manufactured motivation is a narrative, and then at some point, you get down, right? Like your emotions fluctuate in and around that narrative, right? So you don't think Bo Levi Mitchell, as much as he's got legitimate respect for Nathan Rourke, you don't think there was a part of Bo that just felt, you know what, I'm going to show this young guy, right? At halftime, Mike Rose was asked about what Nathan Rourke was doing by Sarah Orlesky. And what did Mike Rose say? Oh, Bo Levi's the best quarterback in the game, and I'll just leave it at that. Well, that means that narrative is permeating in the Stamps locker room, that those guys are saying, we're going to show them who the best quarterback in the league is. And I'm not saying Nathan's the best quarterback, but what I'm saying is that everybody gets caught up in that stuff at some point. Nathan doesn't. And the fact that he doesn't at 24 years of age is remarkable, that he just stays that level of focus. And maybe it'll change later in his career when he doesn't feel like a rookie anymore or feels like he's got less to prove. I don't know, but that's the thing that blows me away is he doesn't need that silliness to get himself. Even Tom Brady, the GOAT, They call him Nate Brady now here in Vancouver. Like, even Tom Brady uses those narratives and that motivation, Deflategate or whatever. And it works for some guys, but then some guys wind up riding the highs and lows because of it. And Nathan just completely shuts all of that out. That's what I love about him the most.
I'm trying to figure out though, like, what's next here, right? So, obviously it's Grey Cup or bust, but if assuming BC, still winning record, makes, deep run the playoffs. We had Dominic Grimes on last week, and he's talking, our receiver room is so stacked. It's because, right, they're
just got more stacked today, which is another story.
Oh, with I've been on here.
Yeah, they just added a guy named Jamarius Way, who in training camp looked fantastic and made some big catches in the preseason. And then he had a serious arm injury that he suffered in Calgary in the second preseason game, and they cut him because, by league rules, you don't have to keep him, right? Because the contract isn't guaranteed and he's a rookie. But they told him right then, we're going to bring you back when you're healthy, and he's healthy now. So how that guy gets into this receiving core, I don't know. But now they've got another guy that they can deal with once, if there's an injury, or get him set up for next year like they did with Keon Hatcher last year. So it's kind of cool that they've been able to develop in ways that previous iterations of Lions management maybe haven't been able to develop and stock the cupboards.
Well, there you go. But so because of that, right, because Nathan's on this like sweetheart deal, right? We're able to bring him in cheap, and obviously I've already seen, like Marshall Ferguson, everyone's talking, Nathan's going to the NFL, all this stuff. And what I'm trying to figure out is obviously what's best for Nathan, what he wants to do, but what does that speak to the CFL if he does decide to go? Like, what is there anything at all? I mean, the Lions can't match a lot in terms of, any other team wanting to bring him on.
Look, it's nice to say, right? But you can't match, right? Even if the league, there's fans that have said they need to have a designated player rule where you can exceed the salary cap with one player. It doesn't matter, right? Like, you're not going to give him $1 million. So let's say you go back to the old CFL quarterback salaries that Bo and Mike Riley got, and they were in the 700s. Let's say you worked out a deal and he could get that. Is that going to be enough? Nathan grew up wanting to play in the NFL, just like virtually every kid in Canada does. And I love the CFL. But outside of maybe Saskatchewan, the kids developed in every other province in the country, and maybe even in Saskatchewan, want to play in the NFL. It is the best league. As much as I love the CFL, the NFL is the best league, and it pays the most money. And it is the best league, and he's a competitor. That's what he wants to do. And he should be allowed to do that. And we shouldn't begrudge him that, right? In Vancouver, we had a soccer player named Alfonso Davies. Played for the Vancouver Whitecaps. He's an Edmonton kid, plays for Canada's national team, and he was a fantastic player. And we knew we were witnessing greatness. He played for the Caps when he was 19, and he was a teenager when he got here. And then he signed with Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga in Germany, right? And fans in Vancouver, they know that that's part of it, and maybe that's part of soccer culture. And they got a transfer fee and all that, but people now watch him in the Bundesliga and say, I was able to watch him win. And that's kind of how we need to view Nathan Rourke. And I don't know that he's going to have that level of success in the NFL, because the NFL is so much about opportunity, especially at the quarterback position, and there's so much arrogance around identification at the position. But the way it's going to work out for Nathan, the league is going to work something out, in my opinion, where the Lions are going to be able to essentially tear up the contract going into the option year 2023, and they're going to be able to extend Nathan. But Nathan's still going to be able to take advantage of the NFL window. And I think there's going to be a lot of interest. I think there's going to be 10 or 12 teams that are going to want to sign Nathan Rourke. Some of those teams are going to be able to guarantee a portion of his first-year contract, and they're going to give him a path to number 2. No one's going to bring him in. This isn't like Warren Moon, where everyone was going to throw $1 million at him and say, you're going to be our starter next year. It's not going to be like that. But he's young, so the NFL is going to want him. They're going to believe that he's young enough to hit their window and develop him. And a team's going to sign him, guarantee a portion of his rookie deal, and they're going to give him a legitimate path to number 2. And then he's going to see what he can do with it. And in a couple of years, if it doesn't work out, Nathan Rourke is just going to want to play. And he'll come back. It's either going to work out and he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, or it isn't going to work out and he's going to come back in a couple of years and he's going to just want to play, right? And someone will pay him $500,000-$600,000 or whatever the top of the quarterback market is then, and it's going to play itself out. So to me, win-win, right? He's going to be a good NFL player that eventually is going to be a starter, not day one, but he'll be a starter, or he'll make his way back and he'll be a great player. And either way, we're going to be able to cheer this guy up.
It's interesting. It's the plight of the non-NFL, leagues. And that's why, when all this XFL and USFL and CFL, all this stuff, like, besides the 100-year, head start you guys have on in terms of, history and legacy and all that stuff, like, because we get that all the time. Well, PJ Walker, like, we want him back in the XFL. It's like, yeah, but PJ's going to make a lot more money playing number 2 or even on a practice squad in the NFL than coming in, trying to compete, playing every week. Like, it's hard to let that love go. Like, what is it? The greatest love, you have to let it go and see if it comes back to you.
Yeah, you're right. And like I said, there's no way to fix that part of it, right? And that's okay, right? And, the thing with the CFL, right? Like, I know, for example, the XFL has signed have had a ton of guys signed with the NFL, right? Now, I don't know how many of those guys are actually going to make a team. And quite often when you sign that late and you get on the back end of a training camp roster, it's based on availability, right? Like, we've seen numerous players over the years that have been released by CFL teams in training camp. And now all of a sudden they're available and an NFL team brings them later because of injuries to fill out roster spots or to fill out practice roster spots. The best CFL players, the reason they don't go to the NFL and the reason they don't, try these other leagues is because the best CFL players are veteran CFL players. And by the time they really hit their stride as a player, they are older. And now the NFL is not interested anymore, right? And, and those players aren't going to be interested in these other alternative football leagues, right? So it is different. What's different about Nathan is he's been able to hit such a high level as a player this young in his career, right? The great receivers in this league, Brian Burnham, Geno Lewis, previous iterations of G. Simon, and, pick a guy, Milt Stegall, like those guys, when they were at the height of their superpowers, you don't think they could have played in the NFL? They absolutely could have, but their height of their superpowers, they were 29, right? They were 30, and now they're not necessarily interested in to go down there and be treated like a piece of meat and be a training camp body and have to scratch and claw their way onto a roster. They're happy here and they're making more money here. So the dynamics of all of that are different. But when a guy's that young and that talented and that much on an upward trajectory, he's got to take the shot, right? And people say, oh, well, Nathan should wait 2 more years. Hell no. He's 24. And if he wins MOP, take your shot, young man.
What do you make of, I know we had some Twitter discussions earlier this year, USFL, and you said, I turned on the game, you're watching hockey, Stanley Cup playoffs. But now USFL, I think at this time of recording, it's earlier in the week, but they had 51, I think, players signed. Now, obviously, players are getting cut, right, as we cut down roster slots. But what do you make of knowing that the USFL at least was a funnel to get some players here, other opportunities? What do you make of the USFL having completed their first season?
I think it was okay, right? Like, look, there were some good players in the league. I got what I expected from an entertainment standpoint, right? So I've watched enough spring football over the years and, I've kind of been around the game a long time. So my expectations weren't high and I don't want to dismiss it, right? Like, me, I'm not one of these guys that just poo-poos all these leagues and say they're never going to work and we shouldn't bother and it's all trash. I'm not that guy. More football is good football, right? So even for me, like, I'll flick on the games from time to time and try to check out certain names and see what they can do. I don't overplay the number of guys that have signed. I think it's a good thing, right, that those guys are getting an opportunity to showcase their talents and sign. I don't think a lot of them are going to make their teams, and I don't think a lot of them are going to be, certainly those that do aren't necessarily going to be household names. But so what, right? Like, they got a chance to play more football. They got a chance to make some money, and they got a chance to just take another swing at the NFL. So good on them, right? Do I think that because they had more guys signed than the CFL that it's better? No, I don't, because as I outlined, so much of those guys being able to sign is timing of their season, when they're available. And CFL guys, when they get good, they're older, right? And you're not going to see those types of players in the USFL because, they kind of know how it works and they're going to see what their window is and they're going to try to keep playing and get to the NFL. But when those guys get to be 29 or 30, are they still going to want to play in the USFL or are they going to want to get on with their lives because you just can't make as much, right? Whereas a, star CFL player could still get, $150,000, right? That's something. So, but again, it's a good thing. I don't think both the USFL and the XFL are going to be able to survive. That's not me being dismissive because I think whoever comes out of that battle is going to be able to thrive, not compete with the NFL thrive. But, like, to me, the standard is, can you be MLS, right? Like, can you be that good where players are still making money and we know they're going to be around for a long time? I think the XFL will be that league. I don't think it'll be the USFL. I think one of those leagues is going to come out of it. And I think because of the XFL's alignment with the NFL and because of their what they've got behind them with The Rock and Danny Garcia and Redbird, things we've talked about before, I think it's the more likely of the two leagues to survive. And when it does, I think it'll be around for a while.
So put a pin in that for just a second. So a lot's been made here. USFL guys getting signed. We've had lots of debates on the show with the timing, right? Where XFL, you're going to get players out in April, right? Get into earlier training camps and things. USFL, obviously, they got out in July. We've had tweets from the league saying, "Well, see, this is why the USFL is the best timeline, is because our players are in game shape, having just played 12 weeks headed in." My fear is you're signing a lot of these guys. They are in shape, right? They've been playing for 12 weeks, but it's okay. We can stick them into camp for a week or two, and then cut them. What do you make of the timeline of like? Well, it's so great. They're in shape now. It's in July, but yet they were. Maybe we won't ride the whole way through to the fall.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, it depends what you want. Like, can a guy go through a USFL season and then make an NFL team and survive on an NFL practice roster? Yeah, you can. But if you're preparing for games and having to go through games, even if it's just on a special teams role, I think that becomes difficult. I think there's a real wear down factor of that much football between the start of the USFL season and the end of an NFL season. I think that's difficult. And I know in the XFL, they've said that if an NFL team wants to sign one of their players, they're going, right? Like that's the way it goes. And that's a good thing. So yeah, the timelines work for the players and they see it that way. And, ultimately, if you're on an NFL practice roster, it's not as taxing on your body, right? And you'll do it and you'll take the money and, they don't practice fully. You're not endangering your long-term health and things like that. So you can do it. But if you actually wind up getting on a roster, you're going to feel that at the end of the season.
In terms of XFL making a lot more news since the last time we've had you on, right? They've announced all their cities. Just today they announced Jordan Palmer is going to come on as the quarterback. Basically, the XFL is going to bring in their quarterbacks earlier in the fall, kind of get them ready to go, before the season kickoff. Any of these announcements, anything making you feel any better or worse about the XFL's long term? I know you said you feel like they're going to be the victor at the end, but the decisions they've made here in the last few months?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the Palmer thing, but, in terms of their timeline and getting the teams going and the coaching staff signed, it's kind of what you expect, right? It's just the general course of doing business. So, again, none of it surprised me. None of it's blown me away. I like the names of the coaches that I saw that are head coaching and coordinating for those teams. I think there's some name recognition there. People in those markets are kind of tied there. I think there's some good in that. So, I like it, but it's kind of what I expected. Nothing's blown the doors off me. They've just taken a methodical approach in their timeline.
In terms of, coaches being hired, being brought in so early, right? Having done showcases all summer. I see. Basically, people are worried that the XFL is maybe a little too top heavy. Where USFL brought in everyone here, the last couple of months before they kicked off. XFL having all these guys already under contract. Does that worry you as someone that is looking at the financials and looking at the viability of these two leagues?
Not necessarily. Look, I think we saw the USFL did everything on a budget, right? And things were done collaboratively and collectively. Some of that is happening in the XFL, maybe not as much. I think they want to create a bit of competition early on in the process. I know that they're also looking for additional financing on the XFL side, but nothing to lead you to believe that anything's in danger. I just think that's good business. So, yeah, look, I think that the XFL wants to, right from the front end, be a little bit more glitz, glamour, and profile. I don't think that takes away from their substance. But, when you look at what the USFL did, yeah, it was good business to be centrally located. But it also looked really poor on the television product, right? The XFL isn't doing that. And so, you deal with the financial repercussions of that. But ultimately, the TV product could wind up looking better. So I don't think it's a bad thing. And again, I expected them to kind of be at a bit of a higher level, just in terms of their presentation right out of the gate. And I think they're trying to go in that direction.
In your day-to-day life covering, CFL, you're going to NFL camps, here, for TSN, everything else, like XFL, USFL, does any of that permeate any week-to-week conversations at all of any kind?
Nope. No, it's just not something TSN's going to do at this point. Now, at some point, they may want the programming hours, and because of the TSN's arrangement with ESPN, you might see XFL games on our network, right? And if I'm asked to get involved, I'll get involved, right? But until then, as a football guy, I pay a little bit of attention, and When the names pop up, right, I'll reach out to guys. I was in a conversation with Jamie Elizondo, who's coordinating now in the XFL. And, when I see names that I know, I'll reach out and just find out a little bit more and things like that and wish them well. And, as those names stay familiar, I'll pay a little more attention, but it's just not what I'm asked to do from a content side at TSN at all. I don't think that's going to, even if we air games, I don't think all of a sudden I'm going to be asked to cover it from a news perspective, right? So my plate is full right now between the NFL, the CFL. I'll be doing U.S. college football again, on a weekly basis, covering. I'll do stuff during the season and then cover the playoff. And then I've still got the Vancouver Canucks and the NHL to cover as well. So my plate is full. So I respect the XFL, but I'm not going to seek out opportunities to cover it at this time.
I'm just always curious, just being in football circles, like if anything, if that stuff, like if it's even in anyone's daily conversations. I'm just, because we live in this, the Twitter, XFL and USFL and all football is like this microcosm of I'm just always curious, like football people that cover everything, like what do you talk about?
Well, I certainly hear the chatter, right? And I'm not talking about what I get from you, but I see the stuff, even, when I talk to our production people, everybody just assumes this is, not going to amount to anything because they're just conditioned to saying that up here. And I just think they're so wrong and misguided in all of that, right? Even on our side of the industry, right? You should want to have more opportunities, right? because it's such a volatile industry. You don't know where it's going to go, right? So to know things and have other opportunities, I think is good. So, I'm not going to dismiss it or ignore it. I'll pay attention, but I just can't dive into it to the level I do at the other leagues. But for me, I'm not going to be one of those guys like so many other Canadian football fans and Canadian football media who just want to dismiss it and say it's not worth talking about. It is worth talking about.
Well, it's all connected. Like you just said, you had Jamie Elizondo, who was just the head coach last year in Edmonton, coming back down to the world. Every year, depending on whatever league it is, it's the carousel, or whether it's quarterbacks or head coaches or coordinators, and someone's left without a seat, and it's good to have other places for them to land, and maybe Elizondo will come back next year. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for the CFL, but but it's good to have people be able to have mobility that way.
It is, right? And even from a coaching standpoint, this is a tough league to coach in, right? Like, as much as I love the CFL, the football operations cap has made it very difficult because you're seeing fewer and fewer coordinators and position coaches on multi-year contracts, right? And they certainly don't get any benefits here long-term, whether it's retirement or disability or what have you, right? So I think you're going to wind up seeing coaches that on any given year just say, you know what, I'm going to go try that. Right? I can always come back here. I'm going to go try that. And you don't want a brain drain to the CFL. But, I do think that there'll be a little bit of that, right? That a coach just gets tired of the one-year contract. And I think they're all going to be on one-year deals down there anyway. It's not like those guys are going to be on bigger deals. But now you're not leaving as much here to go take that chance and want to get that life experience and go live in a warmer city and coach a short season, right? So, the one thing that makes it hard with the CFL is that the CFL kind of overlaps every season. Right? Like you can't cleanly enter one and enter the other like you can between the USFL and the NFL right now for the sake of argument, right? But, I wouldn't be shocked if we started losing more good quality coaches to that league.
Before I let you go here, I appreciate the time coming on here today before you fly out. Final storylines watching for the CFL this season. I know we did the BC Alliance announcement, but Andrew Harris injury, right? Hamilton kind of trying to figure out. What do you see? First off, I think just tremendous gameplay so far. This last weekend was no different. It does feel like a bounce back for the CFL, but what are you tracking here the rest of the season?
Yeah, there's a few teams that I want to take a close look at it. One being Saskatchewan, who the Lions playing back-to-back games right now because, Cody Fajardo a little bit more healthy. They're making some changes along their offensive line, which has been really, really bad this year. But, you're going to get two receivers back really soon in Shaq Evans and Kyron Moore. One could be back as early as this week. And then you've got their defensive line, right, with Pete Robertson and Garrett Marino coming back. So as that team gets healthier, who are the riders, right? Because they are hosting the Grey Cup. There's pressure there. If they sit there in that 4-hole and wind up crossing over into the east, can they make a late run? I want to take a look at, Calgary. I think they've had some offensive hiccups, right? Can they right the ship offensively and gain a little bit more consistency there? And I want to see what happens in the East, right? Because I was one of those at the beginning of the year that thought the East teams would be so much better. and there'd be so much more parity in the league. And we haven't seen that, right? I mean, the East teams, all of them are far worse than I thought they were. And, does either one of them or do any of those four gain some traction and get some momentum before the end of the season and can potentially make a run? Because one thing we see here in the league is that every year the East is so much they're inferior to the West, but you can see that one play. There's always one team that's good. In the last few years, it's been Hamilton, and you can see one team that can still legitimately win the Grey Cup and knock off that Western team. So will a team eventually, by the end of the season, coming out of the East emerge, right? Because overall, while gameplay has been up, Reed, I think quarterback play has been down, right? I expected to see quarterback play better, and I really haven't. Like Nathan Rourke has been exceptional. Zach Caleros has been exceptional. Bo Levi's been up and down. I think the fourth best quarterback in the league right now is Jake Mayer, right? He's sitting there as the backup in Calgary. So I want to see if any of these quarterbacks can really kind of get on a bit of a run, because this league needs good quarterback play. They've always had good quarterback play. And last year and this year, it's taken a bit of a step back. And, I know scoring's been up, so we want to gloss it and say quarterback play has been good. But truly, outside of the top two or three, it really hasn't been. So let's see where it goes in that one area.
Last question for you. I'm just curious your thoughts. I was going to ask this earlier. Lots been made. We had Gary Stern on the show a couple weeks ago. Him and Twitter and Alouettes beat Winnipeg, and that was amazing. But he's feuding with Milt Siegel, and Victor Quee's doing.
It's a friendly feud.
Oh yeah. No, so and Victor Quee is doing singles night at the Edmonton Elks, and Amar Doman's doing concerts, all that stuff. We're seeing. In my minute time, talking about the CFL. It seems like there's a lot of smart people trying a lot of different things right now in terms of okay, let's do all these things to try to build interest. Is that working? Or do you like that? Or what are your thoughts on kind of these out of the box ideas we're working on right now?
Well, I think it's good, right? In terms of BC, I think it's been very good, and we haven't seen it necessarily in the attendance quite yet. But I think it's coming. I think that next Saskatchewan game, you're going to see it, and I think it'll trend. I think one of the big mistakes here is really poor schedule, right? Because I've said before, you need to favor the big markets in the scheduling, right? And those teams need to be fall heavy with their home schedules, and that hasn't happened for BC. And I think that's a league mistake. I think all of these back-to-back games where you're seeing so many teams repeatedly, I don't think that's a good thing. Scheduling's been poor, but Amar Doman's doing a lot of the right things. It's going to take time. I don't think there's a quick fix. As much as I get frustrated, and I've said, what more do you need to see? Committed owner, incredible quarterback, talented team, 7-1. Get to the park, but you can't shame fans into attending. It's going to take time, right? I like that Gary Stern's engaged, but I also want to see the steak behind the sizzle, right? I want to see some substance. I think Victor Quee is doing that in Edmonton, where they're trying different marketing ideas. They're re-engaging in the community. They're doing a few more things than they did before, but the team hasn't backed him up, right? The team's got to get better. The quarterback play's got to get better. That's the hard part with the CFL, is that if ever a league needed parity, it's this one, right? You can't have these teams that are just perpetually bad and then expect the off-field stuff to make the biggest difference. It's got to be all of it, and that's a challenge. So I like what's happening in those three markets, but there's got to be substance behind it. I think there is in BC, between what these guys are doing and what's going to happen on the data side with Genius. I think in a couple of years, you're going to see the benefits, and I encourage everybody to stay patient and stay with it. And I think there's a couple of other markets that need new ownership, and I'm not going to name those, but there are, certainly two in my mind that I think need ownership changes or just, more commitment in that regard. And, I think collectively we'll all be in a better place at that point.
It's interesting. I was at the Mariners game, which you call BC's team, which I think is that. Because BC is America's CFL team, so Mariners are BC's baseball team. Is that BC's MLB team?
Well, I think so, and I think it should be. I despise the Toronto Blue Jays. I have since I was a child. I hate the fact that people in Vancouver feel just because we're in Canada we need to support that team. That's nonsense. When the Kraken weren't in Seattle, the folks in Seattle supported the Canucks. I know in the 2011 championship run to the Stanley Cup final, like all the Seattle media would travel up here to cover those games. Why? Because it mattered there, right? When the Sonics were there and there were no Grizzlies, and there was no Raptors, that was kind of the team, right? So I think that's how it should be here. It's a 2-hour and 15-minute drive to get to T-Mobile. Why do you care about the team 3 time zones away? I get the Mariners have been bad for 20 years. I also get that they've been intentionally shut out of this market by that other ownership group, right? So that's unfortunate because it's not a fair fight. It's not a fair comparison. I know in the late 90s when the Mariners were good and we could see their games in Vancouver, they actually outdrew the Blue Jays, who weren't that far removed from their championship teams. So I'd like to see a good Seattle team just so we can have the reasonable debate. Because for me, I'm not a big baseball guy. But when I do connect and engage, it's that team. It's not this Eastern Canada nonsense. Don't give me that. BC's team is the team you can drive to.
We went to when the Blue Jays were here. We went to one of the Mariner games. I wore my Lions hat because I thought, oh, maybe I'll get into some CFL discussions with whatever. And we ended up sitting with a bunch of, and they're like, oh yeah, we watch the Seahawks. Like we don't watch the BC at all. And I was like,
well, but this is what I don't get. Right? It's like for the longest time, the Bills have resonated in Southern Ontario. And the Seahawks here have had a large season ticket base going back to Jim Zorn, Dave Craig, and Steve Largent, and Kenny Easley, and Cortez Kennedy. Like, it's not just the Russell Wilson era, right? But so we're allowed all of those connections, but somehow people mock the notion that all of a sudden BC fans should care about the Mariners. That's silliness. And, it's unfortunate that those Seahawk fans don't just become football fans and watch the CFL too because they think they're too good for it. But I'm really going to see their fandom tested now, because I do think the Seahawks are going to struggle for a bit here until they get their quarterbacking figured out, right? So let's see how loyal you are if that all of a sudden becomes a sustainable struggle, right? I think they're going to figure out their quarterback in a year. Heck, maybe it's Nathan Rourke, but I'm curious to see what that's going to look like and how sustainable that is. And if you turn around and come watch this, if it all of a sudden gets more entertaining up here. And you know what? Like, here's one thing: as you talk about just side conversations with fans. I was in Vernon this weekend for 4 days with my family, and I was stunned at the number of people, random strangers, that came up to me and wanted to talk CFL, right? And people in the demographic that the CFL needs, right? I'm 54, but they were like people that were in their late 30s and early 40s that were wanting to ask me CFL and Nathan Rourke questions. That really lifted my spirits. That people are re-engaging because this team's got some people excited.
Well, it's good. I'm excited. I appreciate it. I've kept you over. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in Regina. We're lock, step, and barrel, so we'll be there.
All right. More looking forward to seeing your wife. She was a lot of fun last year at Grey Cup.
Yeah, that's good. I am very scared we're going to be cold, but I think otherwise we'll be okay.
You will be cold, but what you're going to get when you go there, it is chicken soup for the CFL soul. It is so important to everybody there. It is awesome to go to any game in Regina, Grey Cup, even, tenfold.
All right. Farhan Lalji, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care, my man.
Well, I'm excited today. We have Nathan Rubbelke joining the St. Louis Business Journal. We have, Coach Anthony back to running amok in your city right now. Lots of XFL excitement going. How is everything for you?
Going well. Mm-hmm. It's fun to see the XFL coming back.
So I'm just kind of, we were talking off, like, I don't really have a theme for this week's episode yet. We talked with Farhan Lalji. We're having you on now. What is your biggest takeaway now? We're talking XFL again. It's coming back to St. Louis, everything else. What strikes you as someone that covers the business of St. Louis?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the excitement's still there. You never know after 2 years of being away if the XFL was going to generate excitement. A lot of things have happened in between there. We've got a MLS team coming to St. Louis, but it's amazing to see the enthusiasm still for the Battlehawks. I was at the grocery store last night, saw a few Battlehawks shirts. So, it'll be interesting to see if they can get the same engagement in St. Louis for the XFL here in 2023. But they're definitely, that fan base didn't go anywhere in the last 2 years. That makes sense.
It's fascinating. I mean, I live in Seattle. I don't think I've seen I think there's one gentleman that works at one of the grocery stores I go to that he's got his Dragons lanyard. Every time I go in, we kind of give eyeballs. But I mean, it's remarkable. St. Louis of any market really did capture that and has been able to ride that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I think a lot of that went to the team they had here for the last iteration of the XFL. Kurt Hunsicker, who was the team president, really built a grassroots campaign. And of course, you had the people kind of wanted to stick it to the NFL here after the Rams left. And so I think that was a huge driving factor of it. Of saying, hey, you said St. Louis wasn't a football town. Let us show you that it actually is.
What have you made, and obviously it's coming more into your purview now as a reporter, but, obviously you heard, okay, Danny the Rock, we're buying all this, we're moving forward. Like, what did you think? Oh my God, the XFL is coming back.
Yeah, I guess there was a sense of skepticism at first. Obviously you see the names behind it, and there's no reason to doubt that, but given what they've done in their careers, but, starting up a league like this is hard. And so, there's some skepticism of whether it would happen, but clearly it is. And obviously, there's different stops and starts during this. Obviously, there was the talks, with the CFL at one point about maybe partnering to some degree. And so, for me, there was an excitement, an intrigue about what it eventually looked like. And I think it's going to look a lot like, with some differences, some big differences, but I think it's going to look pretty similar to what it did in 2020, which I think from a fan engagement perspective, it's going to be familiar to folks who went to games in 2020. And so I think that's going to help get the fan base back engaged as they start playing games here in about 6 months or so.
Yeah, it's weird, and it'll be intriguing to me to see what do they pick and what do they not. Obviously we redid the logo, and I think the footballs are being changed and stuff. The kind of the design of that. It's just weird. It's like buying a house. We're gutting everything. We're keeping. So I just am curious, like, what do they deem as untouchables? Like, obviously St. Louis coming back, that was nowhere. But like, do the Battlehawks come back? Does that logo come back? Does it change? I just am curious, like, how married are they to any one of these ideas?
Yeah, me too. Here in St. Louis, like I mentioned, I saw that shirt at the grocery store, the Battlehawks. It really took off, that team name, that logo. And so I know there's a lot of angst here when they made the initial announcement and didn't give team names, that people, why in the world would they change, move from the Battlehawks? But that might not matter in a market like Seattle, and it might make sense to rebrand. So yeah, I'm like you. It's intriguing, and then the rules. I cover the business of sports, but I'm a football fan. I really liked some of the different rules they brought in 2020, and so I'm very interested to see what stays, what goes. Will there be a kickoff? Will there not be a kickoff? There's a lot of answers here in the next 6 months that we're going to get, I think.
I'm really fascinated about that. When I went down to Arlington a couple weeks ago for the announcement, I was talking with Russ Brandon, the president, and I'm curious, like, what his NFL background, because he's like, we like the rules, we like some of that, but we don't want this to be a gimmick league. Like, I'm curious how much of the NFL in him permeates kind of into his role. I don't know. They said that the rule book is locked in as of, I think, the announcement they had in Arlington. So obviously they know what they're doing at this point, but I am curious, like, you have a lot of NFL brain trust in that room of where do they land on that?
Yeah, it's something I was thinking about too. I think, the good thing for the NFL is that this can be kind of a testing ground for them with new rules, new policies, similar to what baseball has done some things with the Atlantic League and the minor leagues to bring in bigger bases, electronic strike zones. So maybe this turns into something like that for the NFL, where it's not gimmicky. It's really trying to test new innovations. But I'm like you in terms of just what it's going to look like on the field, and I think people in St. Louis here are interested to see what kind of the NFL influence will be league wide in this iteration, just because there is sort of a mistrust of the NFL here in St. Louis. So that kind of remains to be seen. And I'll be interested to see if that sways St. Louis fans one way or the other, if it even matters. It might not.
What do you, as someone that covers business with sports, what do you make of alt football, spring football, non-NFL, any kind of iteration of that?
Yeah, I find it pretty fascinating. Like I said, it takes a lot of work to get this going. It's a very capital intensive business model. In addition to covering sports business, my other beats that I cover at the St. Louis Business Journal is technology and startups. So I cover a lot of startup businesses, and what they're trying to do with the XFL isn't much different. They're trying to start something new. I think it's challenging, but it just depends on how you look at it. From a TV perspective, I think the USFL is pretty pleased with the ratings that they got. But from a local revenue, trying to draw fans, that's hard with so much competition these days. And so trying to balance those two, I guess. And I've had a chance to talk with the team president or team director of team operations here in St. Louis, or any of the leadership with the XFL for this iteration. But it's going to, I guess it comes down to what matters to them. What revenue generator should they care most about? Is it mostly about TV, or do they also want pack stands? Because those might be competing goals at some point for where they put marketing, where they put spending. And so I think that's interesting to me, in seeing what they want to accomplish, what their key kind of performance indicators are going to be.
Where did the USFL land on your radar?
I got to be honest, I didn't follow it a crazy amount, just because we didn't have a team here in St. Louis, or I guess affiliated with St. Louis. But I definitely tuned in to a couple of the games. But I will say I was very impressed with the TV numbers that they came out with. I think that bodes well for the XFL coming up, that there's clearly an interest in people watching. And I think the XFL, actually having teams in these cities, at least playing games in these cities, will draw engagement even higher. Because at the end of the day, if you're not getting viewership, these leagues aren't going to work. Even if you're filling up a stadium here in St. Louis, you're not getting TV eyeballs. I just don't think these leagues are going to work if they don't have that kind of revenue coming in from the TV rights and TV advertising.
I'm fascinated because for I guess the better part of a year now, right? Fox Sports owned USFL.
Mm-hmm.
I've bemoaned all this, like, they're not spending enough. We need, more social media stuff. We need, all these different things. Now the XFL is coming in, we're flying the teams to the markets. We knew that, right? Originally, they're going to do the modified hub, but now even this week they're listing, multiple social media roles for each team. We're going to have people with the teams. We're going to have people in Arlington. We're hiring people to be in each local fan base, events managers, whatever directors, I think they're calling it. Like, now I'm on the other side, like, God, the XFL is spending a ton of money, where it's really like, I don't want to be the one that said, like, maybe the USFL was better off, but knowing how much, the XFL, the reports came out last week, right? They're looking for more investors to come in. Like, I mean, like you said, you cover startups, technology, like, I mean, is that worry? Like, so much money, I just get scared now.
Yeah, it doesn't really worry me a whole lot when I look at the league and what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, I kind of look at it as sort of a startup. If you say you're a software company and you're developing some sort of software, you might go out and raise a little bit of money at the start because I need some money to get this going. But then you're going to create, your kind of minimal product that you could go to market. At that point, you're probably going to go out and raise more capital, saying, hey, here, we built it. We see opportunity here. Let's raise capital so we can grow it further. And I kind of see that's where the XFL's at. They've got it kind of all the pieces put together. And now they sort of need, the capital probably to do some of the initiatives you just talked about in terms of social media and hiring. And so I think that capital is going to help them grow. I mean, it's a risk, and like any startup, but I think I wouldn't be worried about it. I think it's just a growth initiative for them that I'm sure they probably have figured bringing on capital at some point, I think, later on. The question is it sooner or later than they wanted? If they didn't plan to bring on capital till year 3 and they're bringing on capital in year 1, that might be an issue. But I think them bringing on capital is probably a move that makes sense for what they want to accomplish.
Well, this is interesting, and you're probably a good person to talk to, because I've been, the investment, kind of the report came out. They're looking to give up 45% of it. And like, I have all these listeners, messaging me like, is that too much? And, the closest I know to investment is I got a client onto Shark Tank back in the day for like, I'm very proud. I did her audition video. If you watch Shark Tank, the good hang up lady, the one that like the magnet that hangs posters to your wall, like I got her helping.
Oh, wow.
Her. But so that's all I know. And I'm like, well, 45%. Shark Tank's always, you'd rather own 51% of something worth $1 billion versus 100% of something. But like, where do you fall in that? If they're right now giving potentially 35 to 45% of the stake.
No, I think it goes back to sort of the Shark Tank model. You'd have to think as a fan that they're thinking in that mentality, that we're giving up equity, but because we think it's going to be something that's worth much more than it is today. I don't know their thinking process, not having talked to them, and I know they haven't. I know the declined comment in the report last week, but you'd have to hope that is that case, that they're trying to build something larger rather than we need capital now, and so we're just going to go out and raise it because we need it. But I think as the season starts, I think they'll start talking a little bit more about the strategy behind the financial. It's going to be a question that's not going to go away, and so at some point they're going to have to address it, I think.
Well, it's just to me, it's especially because the season we haven't done anything yet. I mean, we've done 6 showcases and an event in Arlington. That was like, I think when we were there for that, them officially announcing the hub, that was like their first actual press conference that they had. They had the live with the cities and all that, but like, it seemed weird that like we haven't done a lot, but yet it just feels like there's a ton being done. I don't know. It's fascinating to see these two competing leagues.
They've been very quiet. The XFL, it's sort of like when they announced that they're talking to the CFL about opportunities, and then it went by time. You're like, is that going to happen? Because they've really kept a lot of things in the room about their plans, and I know they'll start talking more about that as games get closer. But it has been hard to kind of track what their strategy is. Where I feel like the USFL maybe has been a little bit more open about what they're doing and why. And so I'm hoping the XFL kind of gives us a peek behind the curtain a little more into the business operations as we get closer to games launching. That's my hope.
Yeah, it does feel like, especially with like Danny Garcia branding, like we want to be a fan first league, fan driven league, but yet I always joke that she had an interview with Sportico months ago, and it's like, God, we got all this cool stuff we're working on, we can't wait to show anyone, and then they bring out the first logo, and everyone's like, I really like that. I'm like, okay, well, maybe like you said, maybe we should engage a little bit more if you want to, because to me, I was talking with some of the people in Arlington, kind of behind the scenes. I'm like, I just can't imagine you being involved in something as niche as spring football and not like knowing what everyone's talking about, wanting to engage with all that. Like, it's not that big of a world here that we live in.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, so much of the success is going to be audience development and pulling in the audience, and it's a loyal audience in sort of this alt football space. So I would think you want to engage them from day one and make sure you have their loyalty. But I'm sure they have a strategy, and you're seeing more of that. You were down at the event in Arlington, you said, and it seemed like there was a lot of excitement there from what I saw on the live stream.
Yeah, no, and that's good. And then, obviously we have Anthony Becht kind of running around St. Louis, right, throwing out the first pitch at the game. Like, but I like that. And they had said, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we have the XFL St. Louis show. I'm sure you've at least it permeated your view of one of the fan podcasts with Jason hosting that. And he had said, hey, Anthony Becht's going to come on our show here. And I thought, what a great way, already to engage, kind of like, let's re-engage these fans that we've had before. Let's send the head coach there. What do you make of them now? Like, let's send the coaches in there. Let's get these guys running around and trying to engage some of the local media there.
I think it's smart because I think people want to hear what's going on. I think the coaching hires were all made a lot of sense. Anthony was someone, he wasn't a superstar player, but it was a name I recognized when they announced the St. Louis. I said, oh, I know that. I remember that guy. And I think it's like, you can tell he has an enthusiasm for St. Louis as he's gone around and done interviews and thrown out the first pitch. And so having someone who has a connection to the region, who's out here interacting with folks, I think that's an important step. I think I kind of view this as, and I saw that this week that he was on interviews and at the Cardinal game. I said, okay, I think we're going to start hearing a whole lot more in the next 6 months as he lives the first game. I think this is sort of the first kind of dipping their toes into the markets in their respective cities. And I think we're going to see a lot more here in the next 6 months as they gear up for those first games.
Yeah, I almost hope, because, right, everyone, USFL, a lot of trouble, non-Birmingham, getting anyone in there. And, that was my first question to Danny at the event was like, how do you guys, how are you going to compete? She goes, well, obviously, we're playing games there. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. You're playing games. We're like, how are you engaging? And I almost hope that they we're over trying at this point. Like, let's send back there every other week. Like, I almost hope that they're overcompensating for that because like you can't afford to have that blunder of, okay, well now we are playing in the cities and people still don't care. They got to have packed crowds, for these games to justify kind of all these decisions they're making.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I'll be interested to see how other markets do. I think St. Louis has a leg up just on the success they had in attendance last game or last go around. I think they're indebted to Kurt Hunziker, who was the president of the St. Louis Battlehawks in 2020. He was that guy out everywhere. You could not see him out somewhere, preaching about Battlehawks brand. And so I think he laid a lot of the groundwork for this 2022 launch. Like I said, fans in St. Louis are really tied. They really loved it. But I'll be intrigued to see. I think something that made the St. Louis work so well in 2020 was the games were like a big party. People cared about the football team, but it was about. I mean, I was amazed. I went to the first game probably 4 hours before kickoff. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know. I thought I might be the only guy down there. I turned the corner and you could smell the barbecue and the tailgate, and you could see the tents already out. They have to recreate that. And I didn't go to any other games outside St. Louis, so I don't know if there's any other markets like that. But if they can't do that in St. Louis, I don't know if they have to do that. If I don't see that in game one here in St. Louis, I'll be worried about the whole league, if that makes sense, because St. Louis was such a North Star for the league in 2020.
There was one of the events we had here. I think it was like after, it wasn't the summer showcase, but they did something in the fall, and it was like Jim Zorn was here in Seattle, and I think the uniforms were out. They had them on mannequins or whatever. And I remember going with my buddies. I'm like, we could be the only three guys here. We could really, I don't really know. And it was at Memorial Stadium, and my buddy lives right by there. And it was the same thing. We walked around, and there was a line out the door, people waiting to go in. I thought, oh, thank God. Thank God. I was really afraid that it was just going to be us here.
Yeah. I mean, I was impressed by the figures they had. I think, I guess there's a couple of things. I think maybe headwinds for St. Louis in 2023 here. Like I said, we have a Major League Soccer team coming to town that's going to launch around the same time as the XFL season. I mean, I'm sure the games will be on different days, but it will, create some competing interest of what people go to. And then secondly, I think, like I mentioned earlier here in the interview, so much of the Battlehawk success was people wanting to show that St. Louis is a football town. A couple of years have passed. The NFL has settled its lawsuit with St. Louis. So some of those feelings might not be as strong, but I think there's still enough of a contingent of football fans that feel aggrieved by the NFL back in 2016 that it could be a high school football game and they'll show up to show St. Louis is a football town. So I think there'll still be a really rabid fan base. But there are a couple of headwinds that may influence attendance. We'll see. It's all speculative at this point.
You had your report out talking about the rent and everything with the dome coming back. Like any takeaways from that, just in terms of the USFL had such this sweetheart deal, in Birmingham, right? Everything, we're kind of keeping this all in house. XFL having to negotiate. We still don't know where they're playing in Las Vegas, right? Presumably Allegiant. But any takeaways from that and the XFL having to kind of negotiate those leases in the 8 markets?
Yeah, from St. Louis, they got the same price tag for rent as in 2020, which I think speaks to St. Louis wanting the XFL back. Giving them the same terms essentially sort of highlights that this was something that the Dome here in St. Louis wanted back. It was a draw for them. And once again, I guess, the current ownership a bit indebted to the prior ownership for getting that done. But I think it speaks to, this was something St. Louis really wanted to see come back. And they sort of roll out the red carpet for them in making it happen. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued to see if other markets played, hardball a little more in terms of raising, rents and negotiating a little more. It makes sense. Inflation has gone up, higher cost to operate these type of venues. But I haven't seen any of the reporting yet on any other venues, but that's something I'm going to keep my eye on. But it seems like it seems like all the cities really want this. And why wouldn't you? It's bringing people to your big venues. It's getting your brand on TV. Even if there's no really equity, financial equity for the cities. It's a win. It's a win-win for them.
Any of the other markets, the 5 returning, right? Obviously Seattle, St. Louis, but does Vegas, does that concern you as a market? Obviously San Antonio, pretty popular, in Orlando with the AAF, but I've seen a lot of people really hedging on Vegas, and it just in terms of even it being a big market, thoughts on them, placing interest there versus New York or LA.
I think it makes sense to try somewhere like Vegas over New York or LA. Those crowds are pretty paltry in the 2020 iteration in LA and New York. Vegas is someone who covers sports business kind of fascinates me as a whole, and sort of, it seems like the Golden Knights have done well there. But it seems like every sports league is trying to find their way into Vegas now, and it's interesting to see how it all play out. But I think it makes more sense in those big markets. I think there'll be more interest there. I don't know. I mean, part of me wishes they would have picked a Salt Lake or something. I like the idea of going places that don't, or maybe a San Diego that has similar kind of situations in St. Louis and losing the NFL, but still having a really rabid football fan base. I really would have liked to seen that. But so yeah, I'm a little mystified by it, I guess. I think it can work out for them. But I personally, maybe I would have liked to seen a different market in that spot.
Well, especially because it's not like, I mean, obviously Vegas to Dallas flights are fine, but certainly San Diego to Dallas isn't a challenging flight either. So
No.
I do think that would have been. I don't know, especially like I just go back and it's like, okay, are they playing in the Allegiant? We got 65,000 seat, whatever arena. Like, are we just blacking off everything? Like, I just worry the optics there. I mean, I think you're going to get, I don't know. I don't know what the casual, like if I'm, I go like, I'll watch the Golden Knights play in Vegas, right? Even if I'm somewhat of a hockey fan, like, I don't know. Are you in Vegas?
Yeah.
Do you see that the Outlaws are playing? Like, are we going? I don't know. I'll be curious to see.
Yeah, me too. I think, I'm curious to see that across. Now, so there's talks about MLB going there, with the A's potentially relocating. I'm just curious to see how it'll turn out as a sports market. I'm a bit skeptical, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think skepticism is, we have a weekly podcast. I have to be skeptical on it. I can't be all that. Any other thoughts? I have one final question, but any other thoughts before I let you go?
No, I'm just intrigued to see how it comes back. Like I said, it's a startup business. I know it's the third iteration of it, but intrigued to see how it goes and what it looks like. But I think it'll do well here in St. Louis, just like it did in 2020.
You, Mr. Trench, St. Louis, Battlehawk Nation, Kaka, all that stuff. Is a Battlehawk? Is it a helicopter or is it a bird?
I would say it's a bird. But it's funny. I did an interview about why they picked the team name. And I think it makes a lot of sense having Boeing here and McDonnell Douglas. They picked that, but I'm going with a bird. I think it's a bird. The jury's still out there.
It is the great debate of our time. It's the Battlehawk. I want to rectify this. If they bring back the Battlehawks, whatever they end up calling it, I would like to have a little bit more qualification there. If is this a bird or is this a helicopter?
I think they picked the right name. I saw the other four they filed with Patent Office, U.S. Patent Office, and I think the Battlehawks was the best one of the other ones.
I can't remember this. I know Seattle was like the Surge, or we had. I can't remember. Do you remember what the St. Louis ones were?
Oh man, one was the Archers. I remember that one. I don't remember the other three. But I was skeptical when they first put Battlehawks out. But then Kurt, the former president, explained it to me. We're trying to St. Louis's history in flight, and having being home of Boeing, McDonnell Douglas. So it made more sense. I don't know where the cacaw came from at all, but you still hear it around. So I think it paid off. I think they made the right move, despite the ambiguity of it.
Well, I have been told that caca is the law, so I guess
it is.
I did when what was his name? When Randy Krakauer had his big all the news is coming June 1st, and they're going to announce everything, and then they didn't. I was so livid that week. I was going to call the episode the annexation of St. Louis from the XFL or something. I was so upset. I said, "You guys and your cacas have spent 2 years of this now, and I'm done." But no, it's good. St. Louis is back. We're happy, and I appreciate your time today, Nathan.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We'll see you again.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited today. We have Steve Gera, co-founder, president of BreakAway Data. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to you and hopefully talk a little ball with some of your listeners and watchers.
So we run the gamut, right? We do CFL, USFL, and then XFL. For people that maybe aren't following the work that you're doing with the XFL, what's your 30-second pitch of this is what we have going on with the XFL coming up?
So what we have going on with the XFL is pretty much just we run an entire package for our company. So we're an athlete data company. And what we do is we do really two core things. One is we put performance data in the hands of athletes. All right. And that means we have an app, right? We have an app that elite athletes can download, has their game statistics, has their club training data, and then it has all their personal fitness wearable data. Think like Apple Watch, Oura Ring, whatever else it is, right? So if you're an elite athlete, you're using data to inform your performance. We put it all in one place for you. The second thing that we do too is we have a product called Field Labs, which is a on-field biomechanics lab, which is think of, so the 40-yard dash is incredibly useful for telling you how fast people run in a straight line. What we do is we put an 8-camera array around an athlete, and then a football player could be a defensive end, and we have them run the hoop drill. And so we figure out exactly how fast they get off the line of scrimmage, how much bend they actually get, what's their do they accelerate or do they decelerate when they're actually in that like Von Miller bend, and when they come out of it, how's their burst? So what we do is we quantify all that, and we help, and then that data is basically useful 3 ways. 1, scouting, 2, coaching, in personal development for the athletes, and then 3, on return to play. So when an athlete gets injured, we can actually tell you, hey, do they have the same amount of get off speed as they had before the injury? And so that's what we're doing for the XFL.
Well, it's great, and people are excited. Obviously, we cover USFL as well. And, there's been the debate for, over a year now where USFL and is there enough talent, right, between USFL, XFL, right? You have CFL and all that. We were fortunate. We went to the Arizona XFL showcase, saw some players, talked to the coaches there. I know that you were at a bunch of the showcases. What do you make of the level of talent involved that the XFL is scouting ahead of their season?
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of really good talent that doesn't make NFL rosters, like full stop. There's plenty of really good talent to have some compelling, leagues, especially with the XFL, right? So I think here's what I'd say is that after going to those showcases, I was really, I wouldn't say surprised, but I was excited about really 2 core things. 1, how much talent's actually out there, and then B, how much excitement is out there from, because the folks, the guys who are showing up to these showcases and the guys who are playing at this level, they love the game more than anything. And here's the thing. A lot of them may not have NFL measurables, right? And that's the point of breakaway data. And that's the point of our Field Labs product, is to show a player who may have a bad 3-cone drill. But a 3-cone drill, come on, what does that really tell you? What I want to know is, how does he change direction? How does he flip his hips? How does he actually move, right? And the 3-cone is incredibly useful, because historically we could compare 3-cone and other combine data against Sean Merriman, against Lawrence Taylor. We can go back and we can look at how all these players stacked up against it. But in today's game, when coaches are so creative in creating one-on-one matchups and schemes, the name of the game in today's football is, how do you find those undervalued talents who may not have quote-unquote NFL measurables, but are really damn good at one thing. And there are a lot of athletes out there right now, and a lot of football players who are really good at some very specific things. And we were able to uncover a lot of that.
The two different position groups keep coming up, need of quarterback and need of offensive linemen, right, when it comes to the different leagues. I want to talk O-line in a minute, but obviously XFL announcing this week Jordan Palmer, right, coming on, being involved with their quarterback. Thoughts on XFL, working with him, kind of hand-tailoring to go through all the quarterbacks with him?
Yeah, listen, I think it's really smart. Quarterback play is essential, I think, especially for continuity. And you think of, even in the NFL, rookie quarterbacks typically struggle. It's only, out of every once in a blue moon, you get a rookie quarterback that comes in and just everything just kind of sinks, right? That's tough. And so it's going to be the same thing if you're playing ball in the spring. And so if you can have good training, good continuity of coaching for your quarterbacks running into the season, I think it's honestly one of the smartest things that Russ, Doug, DJ, Danny and Mark have engaged in doing. So I'm really excited about it. And I don't know. Listen, there's a lot of really great quarterback coaches out there, but I don't know if you can find anyone better than Jordan right now, as far as like actually being able to take different styles of quarterbacks and get the best out of them personally, because that's really what he's amazing at doing that. Understanding, a specific QB, and then how not to try and make them play the way that Jordan wants to see them play, but what I've seen is he just accentuates the best qualities out of quarterbacks. He does a tremendous job, probably best in the business right now, in my humble opinion, as far as getting the best out of them.
Have you had a chance to talk with Jordan yet, kind of plan stuff maybe that you're looking forward to adding your skill set to with BreakAway?
Yeah, so we've had some initial conversations. We saw him a couple of about a month or so ago at Elite 11, and we talked to him a little bit there. So we'll be doing some work. We'll be doing some work with him and some of the folks, obviously with XFL. But we're excited because he the best thing about what we do is, so our field lab, we're not a bunch of eggheads. So I coached in the NFL. Dave, the CEO of our company, he played in the NFL. So first and foremost, we're not a bunch of scientists who have a good idea and then decided to bring a product into football. All right, we are all about ball first and foremost. But how we've actually built the Field Labs product is we bring the tech and the overarching idea, but we let the coaches design the drills. We let the coaches then tell us also what metrics do you want to see. So like during the showcases, we actually created a drill specifically for Terrell Buckley. So T-Buck wanted one specific drill. We created that for him. Did the same thing for, Wade Phillips. And I imagine we're going to be doing the same thing with Jordan and with the QBs as we go.
I actually had one of our listeners, Max, was very excited to have you come on, kind of research some additional questions to bring on. We had one of that. We asked Terrell about that, Coach Buckley at the Arizona Showcase. Any other coaches? You said Wade Phillips, you working on custom drills for them, trying to figure that out?
Yeah. So Coach Beck, Anthony, he has so many questions for us every single time that we show up, which I absolutely love. And he's asking us about the science behind some of the block force measurements. So one of the measurements that we create is we take a player's weight. We know what the player's weight, right? And then we can tell the velocity and force that they put into a bag when they're in a blocking drill, right? And so Anthony, he was really excited about that, asking about the science behind it and whatnot. But then he was started to ask us about some other how we can do block force with reaction for running backs, because one of the hardest things to figure out is, and one of the things that no one ever tests, right, is how is a running back kind of tactically and technically proficient in picking up run blitz, right? So how is he picking up blitz and doing protections? And what we can do is we manufactured a drill and we actually tested this out. And this was for Anthony, where we had basically three players with bags. I stand behind them. All right. Or I stand behind the running back who's actually executing the drill. And then I move the bags. And so the bags present themselves. And this is a pretty common drill for running backs. And then the running back has to just come in and actually block. Right. So it's him reading protection either from the right, middle, or from the left, essentially. Right. And so that was another drill that we created. We tested out. And I think we'll end up incorporating in the long haul into some of the work that we're doing.
I just think that's really cool, obviously, with Coach Buckley and Beck, and them just being excited, I guess, for the whole process and learning. I think you get that when just the players, you were trying to find man 54, right? Guys that maybe got overlooked, but maybe coaches too that really want it, maybe didn't get their fair shot with trying to, be a head coach or be someone in a position it seems like they're more excited as well to be a part of that process. It's
refreshing for me as someone who I was on the NFL staffs I was oftentimes the crazy coach who had a lot of ideas that were the older coaches would look at me and some of them would be really excited about them. And some of them look at me like I had a horn growing out of my head. And so what excites me is when I see kind of the spirit of innovation and the spirit of how can we do things just a little bit differently. And also too, I think for coaches like for Anthony and for T-Buck, I think it's a real, because they really appreciate younger players, right? I would say Wade's the same exact way though, really appreciate that, these younger players who have grown up, not only playing the game, physically going out in the fields and playing the game, but also playing Madden, the game. And then how those two worlds kind of blend for some of these athletes, because it's kind of become table stakes. In one world, you get all this information, and you get all this, and you can kind of you can do all this development around the way that you're kind of playing the game digitally, right? But then in the physical world, you don't necessarily get all that, right? And we're trying to bring elements of that. So I think a lot of it though is an appreciation from those coaches into the way that players like to be communicated with today.
In terms of circling back, quarterbacks, right? Obviously, huge to need spring football. Offensive linemen as well. We had Eric Galco on months ago now. He was the former DPP, right, with XFL 2.0. Any of the showcases specifically reached out or struck you as, better offensive line talent, or what do you make of kind of the guys that you've seen so far?
Yeah. So, it was, the offensive line talent, I would say at Arizona was really solid. I would say there was definitely some standouts at Dallas. Really impressed with Maryland. Really impressed with Maryland. And I'll tell you what, for pound, the showcase that probably impressed me the most was the one at Jackson. Man, so much talent brimming on that field down in Jackson. I mean, that was really impressive. So listen, I think like offensive lineman is one of the harder ones, right? From a depth standpoint, just because how many huge, fast, long-armed, bendable humans are there on the planet, right? There's just that's always going to be a tough one, and those big boys are always going to be at a premium, and they're always underappreciated too, right? I mean, I think, and that's like one of the things that we wanted to do with the field labs is actually show like the dynamic nature of offensive line play, because a lot of times it just gets buried because fans watch the ball typically. Most fans are watching the ball, right? And where the truth is that like the most exciting part of football for me is actually watching what's happening in the trenches. And so, listen, I think that there are a lot of really good offensive linemen out there. And I think more to the point is there are a lot of really good offensive linemen out there who have like the raw capabilities, and they need some personal development. They need some folks like Kerry Gordon, like Sean Hayes, and some of the folks who are at XFL who are now going to be taking some of these players that have been identified by the scouts and giving them, some training programs for, hey, when you show up in January, this is what we need to be able to do. We need to be able to bend better. We need to be able to, execute, your kickback better. We need to be able to do, scoop blocks better, et cetera, et cetera. I think the level of coaching and the level of kind of performance development that the XFL is committing to that's the thing that's really going to make the difference for positions like that.
It's so funny, we interview obviously varied positions and guys on the show, and it is always fun when like we have an O-line or someone on. My wife watches the show, and then we'll be watching the game, and like she'll pay attention to that, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know him, like he was on it. You pay more attention. I don't know. I feel like it makes her a smarter fan too, kind of seeing some of that stuff in the trenches. Speaking of Sean Hayes, that came out. I'm a big WWE fan for years, right? In NXT and the developmental center they had there, centralizing everything. Now with Sean going to the XFL, what do you make of that? Like centralizing all of the training that way. Obviously, they're doing the hub to keep costs down, but to get all the players there and maybe be able to help them, transition to different teams easier if there's injury, kind of moving guys around.
I think it's just the whole name of the game, I think, for for successful spring league football, right? And this is where XFL was on a really great, plan. They were on a great trajectory, in the last iteration. It was really exciting, and we were a part of that too. I think the thing that really gives you an advantage over is frankly just kind of the quality control of the athlete development, and the quality control around everything from return to play, quality control around, the different ways. And it's just really what it is it allows you, instead of having, 8 teams spread out all over the place. And so your knowledge is all of a sudden very distributed, right? Now you have all those teams there, and those teams need to go find competitive advantages themselves. Right. And the coaches are going to do that. Right. The coaches they are bent on doing that. Like there's a lot of trash talk at the at some of the showcases, which is a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, but also you can tell there's a lot of guys who want to go win some games. But the great thing is that by having all the knowledge of the league in that tight confinement, we're going to see a lot of dividends on everything from return to play when players get injured to personalized athlete development, because now you're going to be able to reach back and forth between all the different people who are going to be involved, and you're going to be able to solve and get some good solutions for specific athletes across all the different teams, and that's going to raise all ships.
I think there was somewhat over 1,500 guys that had signed up, didn't make it into any of the showcases. And I believe the league's come out and said that they're going to at least run more, kind of fall. And I know Nick Novak has a specialist one coming up. Any other plans to incorporate if that number continues to grow of guys that want to be with trying out and doing the showcase?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think we're partners with the XFL. So when the XFL tells us to show up somewhere and start getting players, man, we're going to do it. And we're really excited about that, right? The other thing I'll tell you too is that we've had like a lot of people reach out to us. Like we weren't at Hawaii. We didn't go to Hawaii for a couple of different reasons, but ultimately, like because we actually we're here in LA. What we're talking about doing, and I've told this, I've said this on a few other podcasts and a few other areas, is that I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to host an event out here just by ourselves, right? And we'll share that information with the XFL. And we're gonna, but we're probably going to open that up. We have high schoolers, we have seniors who have come out and actually done our field drills. Like, we have Elite 11. We have some college football programs that we've worked with. We have a number of NFL players in our database as well. So we've got a lot of folks that we can kind of cross compare people to. And so I think at some point in September, maybe early October, and there'll be more. We'll be releasing this probably at some point on some of our channels. But I think we're going to host an event and allow people to come out and do their own thing. But listen, between what Jordan's doing, between you said, like what Nick Novak's doing, and between what the XFL's plans are, people are going to see a lot of us, and we're just really excited to be supporting this league, because for us, it's all about co-creating from the ground up with them, and they are just absolutely like the best partners. I mean, just amazing football minds between Mark Ross, Russ Brandon, and Doug Whaley. So every single time they give us a shot to go do something, we get really excited, right? And they got a great their technology team is awesome too. Like Scott Harneman and the folks who are running that side of the business, Brad and everybody. They're excellent.
A couple of quick questions here. I'll let you go. I appreciate your time. This was interesting. Max helped me come up with this. So you guys have all this data, incorporating that into the broadcast, into maybe the draft with Disney, working with that. If the commentators have, this guy's able to do it. Any thoughts of that? Do you guys have any work or thoughts?
Totally out of my control, but man, I hope we do it. Totally out of my control, because there's some really great stories we can tell about cross-comparing athletes, showing how an athlete kind of moves from, because there are going to be some athletes that we identify and listen, the breakaway and field lab and the data that we're creating, that's just one part. There are a lot of parts. And still to this day, what you do on the football field and how you go play the game is the most important thing. Right. And we are not going to replace. I mean, we are just another data point and another information source for the scouts and the coaches and the DPPs. They know what they're doing. They know good ball when they see good ball. We're just one other data point. Now, what I think would be really cool and what I'm hopeful that we're going to have happen at some point is that, some of the stories that we're able to generate about an athlete who maybe their get off was lagging, but man, they did these other three things really, really well. And if now, by giving that information to the performance staff at the XFL, they now help that player improve their get off either through technique, and that's coaching, or through athlete development, right, in the weight room, then that's a great story to tell. Because now that's what spring football is all about, is taking these players who and trying to give them a pathway to get to the NFL and or just to have a great career playing spring ball and playing at the highest levels that are attainable for them. And so what we're hoping is that some of that information can not only help the athletes, but also can tell stories about those athletes. So that would be great. We're hopeful.
Yeah, I've interviewed a bunch of different broadcasters for the leagues, and they're talking the amount of work you have to do in prepping for an alt football or spring football game in terms of knowing things about the players and knowing their backstories. It's just so much more work that goes into it because you're trying to educate everyone. So if you were able to have some of this data and numbers and be able to kind of help just conceptualize it better, I think that would be cool.
I agree. Yeah. Hopefully, just send that note to ESPN. Make sure that they.
We'll do that. Last question for you today. I'm not even going to paraphrase this, but he said, among the tidal wave of new innovations besides your own, what is on the cutting edge in data for football that excites you the most, and where it can take the future of the game? What are you looking forward to most in terms of future innovations you guys can help provide?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a big question. Listen, I still think one of the things around one of the main innovations, and there's probably two fronts, right? One of the main innovations, first and foremost, I think is getting athletes to really lean into their own and own their own development, right? And most athletes do, right? I'd say, and predominantly all athletes, if you want to be an athlete, there's very few athletes who go out there and they're always willing to do something to get better. Right. And so one of the main innovations that we're excited about, and this is one that we're trying to, really kind of spearhead in the space, is making all of the information that an athlete generates accessible to them so that they can have more thoughtful conversations about their own athlete development, right? And that's a simple innovation. That's not cutting edge. There's no new technology that we're generating for that, because the truth is that there's just tons of data out there about athletes, and they don't have any way of actually grabbing it all, putting it all into a mobile application, and then looking at it. And that's what we're trying to solve, which is, instead of going, really deep into a new technology, it's like, how do we take all that information that already exists and just make it more useful, and make it, because there's a lot of true information out there, but there's not all that information that's true is useful, and we want to make it all useful, specifically for athletes and their coaches. The second thing, I'm really excited about. The kind of the innovation that I'm starting to see happening around returning athletes from injury back to the playing field. For a long time, it's, players have to go play hurt. They have to go play injured on a regular basis. And the level of information that we've had about how an athlete moves, either biomechanically or their internal or external load when they're coming back from injury, that's been pretty limited. So it's still been pretty much eyeball test. Right. And so you have an athlete go out there and they return to play because they think they can, we think they can. But now what you can do is through everything from field lab, and there's other pieces of technology, player tracking data, et cetera, that you can now evaluate. You can go watch them during a workout. And instead of just using your eye, you can also have data that backs that up, that decision to play them or not to play them. And that's where I think you just have a more informed athlete. You have a more informed, so you may still go play that player, but now you're just more informed, and that's going to definitely help, I think, long term, as far as helping athletes get back and then sustain on the field once they actually do return to play.
Okay, well, I appreciate your time today, Steve. It's been good. Sometimes in XFL, we're announcing all this stuff. It's like, okay, what does that mean? I think a lot of viewers and stuff appreciate you coming on and sharing some time and kind of putting the real story behind how useful a lot of this data is and the work you guys are doing. So I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Reed. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and then if any players are watching, I've said this on some other things too. If any players are watching this and they need help or they have any sort of questions for us, you can always feel free to just reach out to me direct. My email is readily available on the internet. It's pretty easy to find, the spam tab. So Steve at breakawaydata.com. Just shoot me a note and we'll get you guys set up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Special thanks to all of our guests today. Farhan Lalji coming on, taking time out. Crazy. I haven't bugged Farhan all season just because I know he's crazy with the CFL. But now, of course, as soon as the NFL is starting, I bug him. So I guess I can never win with that. But I really appreciate Farhan coming on. Nathan Rourke as well, taking time out at St. Louis Sports Business Journal. I thought a really interesting conversation, like I said, with Nathan about that startup mentality of the XFL, approaching it not only as a football league, but as just a tech startup company in general, how you would go about, fundraising, looking for investors and all of that. And then Steve Gera, BreakAway Data, really appreciate XFL and the team over at BreakAway for setting that up. One final bit of news, Jacob A. has sent over a photo. He was part of the winners of the 2,000 subscriber giveaway. Nathan's got his Hamilton Grey Cup scarf here I mailed out to him. You see Nathan watching the BC Lions thrilling come from behind victory against the Calgary Stampeders last week. It wasn't looking too good for the BC Lions right now. Down 12 here with a minute left in the third, but a thrilling game last week from the BC Lions. Hopefully another good one this weekend against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But again, if you ever get any of the giveaway items, please send them over. Love seeing, especially your faces, enjoying the items. But if you don't want to do that, certainly like Jacob's little man cave here he has going on with the Hamilton Tiger Cat scarf from the Grey Cup. That will do it for me today. Really good show next week as well. Got some good guests lined up for that. Really excited to share that with you guys. Thanks as always for your support. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.